Good evening and welcome to Transition Talks Tuesdays. My name is Tim Markle. I'm the director of the Southern Regional Center. I'm here with Julie from New Lisbon High School, Brian Kenney from the Transition Improvement Grant. And we are going to be talking post-secondary transition plan tonight. Well, actually, Julie and Brian are going to be talking post-secondary transition plan tonight. I'm going to be having my dinner. And Julie also has a guest with her, and so I'll allow her to introduce because I'm just going to turn this now over to Julie and Brian because I know they know what they are doing. So Julie and Brian, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thanks so much, Tim. I'm going to just move this over briefly. This is Tristan. He is a sophomore at New Lisbon High School, and Tristan's going to help me present the post-secondary transition plan because he's been involved with writing one, and he's been involved with running his own IEP meeting. He's the first sophomore I've ever had to do that. So I'm pretty pumped about Tristan. We'll talk a little bit more in a bit. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Brian.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay, Julie?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So my name is Brian Kenney, and I work for the Transition Improvement Grant. I'm super excited to be here. This is 2 days in a row I've gotten to present. Yesterday I got to present in front of real people at UW-Madison, which was awesome. I got to speak to students and very similar topics to what I'm going to talk about today. We're going to try and weave the post-secondary transition plan and family engagement into one practice that's very seamless. So I've already heard from Julie about her student is a participant. He runs his own IEP meeting, and that's so awesome. I mean, that's 1/3 of our objective is to talk about participation, and that means the family, the IEP team, the school district, and any outside agencies. And we have to talk about partnerships because we can't do this work alone. We have to have I look at transition like a race in track and field. If you have a relay team, the first person on the relay team eventually has to give up the baton, and that last person has to finish the race. So transition is a lot of baton handing off, and I want to congratulate Julie. Tim recognized her with an award, and I can't think of a better teacher who's a servant leader for students to earn this award. She's been a rock in New Lisbon for a very long time. So congratulations to Julie. And the last one, and probably the most important one, is we have to talk about communication. And the post-secondary transition plan involves all of these things happening at the same time. Probably one of my biggest sayings, and I say it all the time, I try to hold myself accountable to this saying, and I think it applies to everything in life. What we permit, we promote. What you allow, you encourage, and what you condone, you own. And we make a lot of mistakes in special education, but we do get things right too. And one of the things that we need to get more right is inclusive practices. If I could give one piece of advice to parents, it would be to fight back with all of your energy. And not fight back with boxing gloves, but fight back with your advocacy skills, interrupt conversations where people want to presume your son or daughter's incompetence. And we do this a lot, and we don't even know we're doing it. And sometimes we do it and we give ourselves permission to do it knowing that it's not right. You need to fight for an inclusive place. You need to fight for participation. I always say that students with disabilities want Starbucks. And let me explain. I have lots of friends, Sandy, I see Sandy on the screen. Sandy, you have lots of friends. Julie, you have lots of friends. Tim and everybody else on this call. And sometimes we just want to go to Starbucks, right? You want to get your coffee, your latte. Kids with disabilities just want coffee. They just want to participate like everybody else in life. So sometimes we exclude them from participation based on their disability, and that's not right. And we need to stop doing that. You need to fight for purpose, and you need to fight for a plan. That's huge advocacy work that involves a lot of layers of things. And if I have time at the end, I'm going to come back to a video about presuming incompetence. But first, I want to make sure I get through all this material. So the PTP is an acronym for the Post-Secondary Transition Plan. It was developed as a web-based tool. In 2012, the PTP went completely web-based online. And this plan assists school districts to document all of the transition requirements that exist in our state while simultaneously meeting students' individual needs. In Wisconsin, we do a lot of really, really good work. Our law requires that transition start at age 14, and we probably are one of the top 5 states in the nation when it comes to transition. And that's proven by some of the tools that we're going to show you today that exist in our state on behalf of families and students. And it's also proven at the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition. They like to do things with us. They like to involve us in their workshops, and they enjoy our state a lot. And I think that's really important for us, and that's something we should be proud of. But we have a lot of work to do. Probably the most important thing in the post-secondary transition plan, and I relate this to building a house. If you built a beautiful home on a lousy foundation, you have a lousy home. It's no longer beautiful because it lacks a good foundation. It's just something we can't overlook. And you can't overlook transition assessments. This isn't just checking boxes. As you can see on my screen, this is a requirement of every IEP team. Every IEP writer needs to have a post-secondary transition plan starting at age 14. So when a student is 13, gonna turn 14, the IEP has to have a PTP with it. And it's a lot of box checking, right? So yes, I did a transition assessment. Yep, done. Check the box, yes. Has the IEP team reviewed the student's academic and career plan? Yep, did that too. Yep, done. Next, go on to the next screen. And it's a rush, right, to get this thing done. But as parents, you want to be fully understanding what was the transition assessment and what did it accomplish? You know, what did it showcase about your son or daughter? Because the transition assessment should expose some passions, some preferences, some interests. And I've only met Julie's student that she's going to have present for about 5 minutes, and I already know about 3 things about him. And when you develop relationships with students, you want to really make sure that you document transition assessments. And that's why in every page of the PTP, for the most part, we have these additional information boxes. And teachers can type in here and go beyond just yes, yes. I hope that makes sense, because this gives us a pretty clear picture. And the PTP is a running record. So 14 to 15 to 16 and so on, potentially, 4 years of high school, you're going to have potentially 4 or more transition assessments that are going to be accomplished. That's going to give a lot of information about a student, but only if we do this to a high degree. So school districts lack a lot of tools and resources to do transition planning. So one of the things that we like to do is provide them with some questions that they should be asking. And this person that designed these questions is Mary Morningstar. She's probably one of my favorite people in the transition world. We want to get to the root of what makes kids tick, because that's going to build.
Brian, before you get to the root, how are parents involved, or how can parents get access to the assessments, if the school's doing these assessments and they're coming up with these conclusions about the child, how can the parents be involved in that process? How can they get access to the assessments?
Good question, Tim. So just ask. Most teachers, when they do assessments, they're going to keep those documents as a record. So if you ask to see those at the IEP team, maybe when the meeting, before the meeting starts or after it gets done, that'd be a good time to view those. And many assessments, when done properly, have a parent component. Julie will talk a little bit about one of her favorite assessments has more than just the student providing feedback. It's also the teachers and the parents. So you get this complete package. So I hope that kind of answers the question. And going back to that additional information box, when the teacher writes the date of the assessment and they write in, what did you discover from the assessment? What knowledge do we now have as an IEP team that we didn't have before? Because all of the decisions that you're going to make during a calendar year are going to ride on this assessment. If we do this well, everything else falls into place. If we get this wrong, then we're going to be making a lot of decisions about the direction that we're going to go with students that might not be very good. Here's a good example. Tim has a daughter in college. If she spends 2 years in college and doesn't know what she wants to do and then changes her mind, that's expensive. Changing your mind in college is really expensive. Changing your mind when you're a young person, starting at 14, doesn't cost us anything. So if we do a good job here, we're going to gather some really good information about how students change over time. And then we can change the direction of the IEP based on what they want to learn and discover. It's very, very simple to do assessments, but it's also very hard because sometimes we don't look at this as the foundation of the house. It's not a door, it's the concrete. So I hope that makes sense. So these questions here really probe for information. What are the methods you're using? Who's going to gather the information? This is not done in isolation. School counselors are doing assessments with students through academic and career planning. Folks like Julie, who are special education case managers, and Shayna are doing this as well. So there's lots of different things being collected, but what are you doing with it? That's the key. And is the student making progress? If a student's not making progress and you're midway through the year, something's not right with the transition assessment. We've gone off course. And that's great, as long as we recognize that, we go back, do it again, and get back on course. So transition assessments really look at 3 big things. We call these the big 3 in the PTP. Education and training beyond a high school diploma, right? People ask questions, well, what if a student doesn't want to go to college? Why do we have to talk about education and training? Well, because everybody needs on-the-job training. Some kids are going to do apprenticeships. Some are going to do like short-term certificates. If you go right to work, somebody is still training you. So we have to help kids discover, what kind of training am I going to need beyond my high school diploma to make a good living? And you got to talk about employment, right? I had a teacher, really frustrated teacher, call me the other day, and my student just wants to be a YouTuber. And I said, well, okay, what is it that he likes about YouTube? He's really into IT. Okay, let's chase that rabbit. And I helped her discover the student's passions, preferences, and interests beyond a YouTuber. Because let's just face it, to be a YouTuber, you got to have lots of likes on your YouTube page before you start turning that into employment. So we needed to come up with a plan for, that's a great side hustle until you get really good at it. But what's the focus of employment and we found it. It was technology. The student is now repairing all the Chromebooks in the district. So they're working with the IT department in the school, which is pretty cool. So, and the last one is independent living. If you can't live independently, then you're going to struggle unless you have all the resources in place to provide you with direct instruction in independent living. We have to help students with disabilities navigate their communities so they can live independently. And independent living also includes lots of different things. And I'm going to show you a resource later that'll unravel all those different things. And you want to ask lots of questions. Like I ask my kids all the time about what they want to do with their lives. And my kids are going to be 13 and going to be 10. So this is huge. Something that we have that really helps teachers is we built our own Google site. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I'll spend a little. Teachers always ask questions about, well, where can I find really good assessments? And I could not have created this without the help of teachers in the field. So Julie actually, about, I don't know, 7, maybe ish years ago, helped me create this document on paper. And then we turned it into a Google site. So Julie's actually gets a lot of credit for helping me with this project. And we just keep adding stuff to this. So we have a whole library full of assessments based on 6 different sections. And I'm going to focus my energy on section 6, because this is the one that gets used the most. And this is specific areas of need. The most difficult students to assess for whatever reason. Sometimes this can be a challenge for us. So in section 6, we have 4 subsections in here. Visual impairments, students who are deaf and hard of hearing, kids who really need pictorial and visual assessments, and then mental health tools and resources for transition planning. And this also includes healthcare transition. Thanks to Tim. Tim really pushed us to add in some transition tools for healthcare, because if you're not healthy, you can't work and you can't live independently and you can't continue on with your lifelong journey of education and training after high school. So your health is important. So I'm going to go to visual and pictorial assessments. And you can see we have a whole bunch of links here. And some of this stuff is free and some of it's not so free, but that's okay. School districts can pick and choose if they want to spend some of their money and they make an investment in some of these transition tools. They can purchase these ones that are not free and use them regularly with students. But one that I really like, probably my favorite one, it's so simple, is this career interest inventory with pictures. It gives you so much information. It's just a bunch of boxes with pictures, right? And you check the ones that you're most likely to engage in. And it categorizes you into different types of people: the doers, the thinkers, creators, the helpers, the persuaders, and the organizers. And the older that I get, the more I start seeing myself being all of these things. But when I was younger, I was definitely the helper and I was the persuader. I could sell an empty popsicle stick. That's no lie. So when you give a simple assessment like this to a student, it gives you a ton of information about them, because this will allow you to go out into the community and find a good job shadow or a good volunteerism for a student to learn, like, okay, if I'm a good helper, maybe a good place for me to work would be nonprofits. And every community has a nonprofit. I don't care if you're in New Lisbon or Beloit. You're going to have a nonprofit that's going to love to have students come in and help. But this isn't where we stop. We never stop with volunteering. As a parent, you have to push down the gas pedal for employment in your community. Everybody deserves to have a job. I don't care if it's a student that doesn't have mobility access or a student with a very significant disability. Some employer wants to hire them to work, and we can find ways to be creative to accommodate people to work. So these assessments are so important, and it doesn't have to be rocket science. We do have assessments that are rocket science too. But sometimes simple is okay if it gives us the information that's allowing us to make informed decisions. I could spend a whole day in here. I mean, there's so much stuff in here, but you'll have access to this as a parent, and you can go in here and the IEP is a two-way street, right? You can come to the teacher and say, hey, I really like this assessment. I think it would be really good for my Susie or my Billy. Can you please maybe consider using it? And I don't know too many teachers that are gonna say, no, we're not gonna do that. No. Yeah, sure, we'll do that. Any questions about where we are so far? Anybody? Tim, anything? I know there's some stuff in the chat. I just can't look at it because I'm.
Yeah, that's a bunch of me doing
That's
stuff.
a bunch of you.
That's a bunch of me doing stuff,
right.
Just following you along on links. But with these assessments, I mean, you have some of those that are free to download. So like you just went to them tonight. So parents, family members could go and, just do their own little mini assessment if they wanted to, if they wanted
Sure they can, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is great information, and my kids have been doing transition assessments, and neither of them has an IEP. I think my son probably could use one for a little bit of ADD. I don't know where he gets that from. Probably from me. But I've seen a lot of growth over the years from their transition assessments and doing the transition app, which Julie will talk about later. Here's more assessments that I really like. I'm not going to click on all of these, but Arkansas transition assessments, very similar to what we do. If you click on tools and resources and go to assessment tools, they got a ton of stuff. It's all color coded. I mean, look at this. Assessments for parents, students with complex needs, visual impairments. I mean, you can see Arkansas was basically thinking like Julie and I were about how can we put together resources in one place for teachers to go grab them. Julie, I don't know if they copied us or if we copied them or if it was a little bit of both, but oh well.
I would like to think they copied us.
Yeah.
It was something I started many, many years ago. I just started compiling anything that I came upon because I've been doing this for many, many years. And in the early years, there were not the resources there are today. So as time went on, I just compiled information, and then I had to present at a conference with Brian, and I happened to have all this stuff and had it on display. And Brian's like, whoa, I got a great idea. So,
And that great idea turned into our Google site. And it's one of our most popular products that we have on our grant. So that's a big vision that kind of came to life. And so lots of resources for us to share. And here's kind of where I'm going to turn things over to Julie, and I'll stop sharing so that she can talk about the Wisconsin transition app, because it's easy for me to talk about it, but she's actually using it in the field with her students and experiencing a lot of success. So Julie, go ahead and take over from here.
Okay, so before I actually get into that, I do kind of want to go back and address Sandy's question. Sandy, one of the things that I use in my program with my students is what's called the Enderle-Severson Transition Rating Scale. And it's a 47 question vocational assessment. And I use that every year. So the kids know it as the purple booklet. You know, when I pull that out, they know, especially at IEP time, that I need to use that tool. And there's with Esther J. And if you don't post the link, Tim, I will. I have really liked their assessments. They have them for different levels. So they even have some that can be used for individuals who have more developmental disabilities, and there's even a parent form. So it's something that's nice that you can compile the information, you know, because this is a team, so it shouldn't be just teacher or just parent. It should be the whole collaboration of everybody. And in my case, I also include my students with this. But in any case, what I want to show is something I've compiled. So let me bring this up here. So I've given this to parents. After I do the assessment, there's no right or wrong answer. There's 5 categories, and then there's different areas in each category that's assessed. And it's either yes, they can, or no, they can't, and all or none. If they can do part of it, it's still considered a no till they can achieve it. So if I had, and this is not a real student, but if I had this student, Joe, that I looked at, yes, he has excellent school attendance. He's always punctual to his classes, but he has an issue with hygiene and grooming. So that would be a no. And then I take this information, and this is not included with the Esther J. It's something that I developed that's tangible, that the parents can see, but the percentages are based out of, for example, employment. There's 13 areas under employment, and you take the number of yeses, divide it into 13 total, and then you calculate your percent. And the idea is, this student, my fictitious student here, is a sophomore. So I say not too bad percentage wise. We try to get them as close to 100% by the time they graduate. But then we look at, under the employment category, these are the areas the student needs to work on. Maybe under recreation and leisure, there's 4 categories or 4 areas, and maybe there's public behavior that needs improving or whatever. There's the home living, community participation. Mobility has to do with, like, do they have their driver's license? Are they able to get around the community on their own? Community participation. Some of it focuses on, like, ways to save money when shopping, or appropriate social behaviors. Or are they able to go into local businesses and perform transactions at those businesses on their own? Post-secondary education, of course, looks at how much are they able to do on their own after they graduate high school. What's real common is a lot of my students struggle with self-awareness and self-confidence. So when I look at this, then I compose the sheet that these are concerns that we look at, need to be addressed in the IEP. And future planning, of course, I'm not going to focus too much at, when they are freshmen, on where they're going to be living after high school. It's stuff that we'll be thinking about and we'll be exploring, but it's not going to be an IEP goal their freshman year. So I don't know if that helps. I guess, again, as Brian had mentioned, Sandy, if anything, ask the case manager, what vocational assessment tool did they use? Do they have any results from that? Sometimes some of them, as I said, I developed my own, so the parent did have something, but most of the time I don't even hand that out anymore because I put it right in the PTP itself. So, and you get a copy. So on that note, I'm going to move on. Did you have any questions at all with that? Okay, so let's see here. So, okay, so back in October, I don't want this. I want this. Okay, back in October, what I did was, I guess I have to share, right? That tells you how often I do this. Let me get to sharing here. Okay, hopefully you can see that. There's an app. You can access it through Google or through Apple, or you can actually go online with witransition.org, I believe. And after the survey is completed and each student completes it, then when the printout comes, this is the first page that tells you how you can use the Wisconsin Transition app for your post-secondary plan. So every plan has this for their first page. So Tristan's letting me share his, and this is the results of the information that he entered into the transition app. So at the time we did this back in October, he was 16. You're still 16, right? Yeah. So we'll kind of share this, Tristan and I. But every student's different. Now, the way this is developed, the information cannot be saved due to confidentiality reasons. So what they do is students are to enter their email address, and I have them enter my email address because then I keep a copy, I print it out and I put it in their portfolio. They can also send the results to their parents. And I love it because what happens is for the students who enter their parents' email addresses, the parents don't know it's coming. So they get it and it's like, what is this? And it's a great opportunity for students to talk about what they did in school and that they entered information, and this is what came out of it. And with that, they use it to help build their IEP. So in the case of Tristan and the other students that I had, after they entered the information, everything about them, so it can be their hobbies, their extracurricular activities, any clubs or organizations they're part of, any goals they have after high school. And in Tristan's case, he wants to go to technical college and be a police officer. It even focuses on independent living. You know, does he want to live by himself? Does he want to live in a house or an apartment? Does he want to have a roommate? So forth. But it's a really nice printout. It covers everything from independent living to employment to post-secondary education or school beyond or training beyond high school. It also looks at goals for self-advocacy. That's a big push. We want our students to learn to become independent and to make their own choices and to make some decisions. And sometimes that can be pretty scary, but you know, with a little practice and support from school and from parents and such, students do a great job with that. They even look into what they want to go into. So what kind of classes do they need to focus on to help them achieve their goals? So in the case of Tristan, he said he needs to increase his math skills. He wants to do some art. He wants to take some foods classes because, hey, he's got to eat, so he's going to have to cook because he knows mom's not moving in with him. And he wants to be physically fit because he thinks police officers should be, which is really a great goal. So then when it gets to the summary of performance, and we're not really going to focus on a lot of that tonight, but for parents who don't know, the summary of performance is what's given around the time of graduation, which covers, it's kind of a summary of where they're at academically, where they're at their abilities with reading, writing, math, their strengths, their limitations, what kinds of supports are needed, is assistive technology needed, and so forth. And then at the end, students can sign this if they wish. And as I mentioned earlier, this information, before they're closed out, this information is sent to via email because it's not saved. You can't go back into it. So when it's completed, it has to be done in one sitting. Okay, so then I'm going to turn this over to Tristan. Let me get this here. And what we did here, I'm going to minimize that. So what we did, I had given the kids their printout of the results of their transition app, and then they had to develop a project, which eventually was used at their IEP meetings if they wanted to. And Tristan did. And Tristan's the first student I had who was a sophomore who was willing to run his own IEP meeting. And that I usually do it in pieces, like when they're freshmen, they can at least introduce everybody because they'll be the one who knows everybody at that meeting. But we just add a little more. And here Tristan jumped in with both feet. I asked him if he wanted to. He's like, sure. So I was like, have at it. So Tristan's going to talk about his project that he did back in October. Okay. Sure.
All right, so yeah,
Put your hand up.
this is my PTT.
How'd you decide on your pictures?
I pretty much took them myself. I love like scenery and like outdoors, so that's pretty much all I did, just outside. About me, I like to hunt, fish. I'm a part of FFA, Farmers Field Agriculture. My hobbies kind of football, wrestling, baseball, sports. I am 16 and I love tacos. My goals after high school, one of my goals is to graduate from high school. Another one is to go to Western Technical College. I want to be a sheriff and have a job during college. I want to get my homework done in time and be able to do stuff like hunting and fishing and other stuff. Goals for employment. Employment goal to be a sheriff. Skills I am good at: running out orders to customers. A strength, agility, getting the job done. And current employment, Culver's.
Except now, do you work at Culver's? No, he left Culver's, but at the time he did this, that was his current employment.
Post-secondary education and training. What do I want to do? I want to get to learn more about college. Pre-employment skills I already have. I show up to work on time. I get the job done in little time. I am very fast. Accommodations I need in college: extended time for tests, extended time for assignments, study skills support, test readiness. Employment. Culver's is my first job. Skills to improve at my job: I just need more training to be a cashier. Post-secondary goal for a living: I want to live in an apartment or a house by myself, or an apartment with roommates and friends in a dorm. Self-advocacy: being a strong self-advocate and understanding my disability is important for me to be successful. In college employment and day-to-day life, I want help with my self-advocacy skills over the course of high school. Course study class I need to take to be a police officer and my future: math, art, foods, and physical education. Community agency and adult services I need: division of vocational rehabilitation. I need to apply for DVR services this year, like after my meeting. Miss M said she will help me apply. I have applied for that, so.
And he's currently receiving services now. So that pretty much, that's what the kids do. And of course, for obvious reasons, we review this annually because there are changes. And as we mentioned, Tristan no longer works at Culver's. He has joined one new organization. In fact, he was part of spearheading and getting it started, which is called what? Fishing.
Club.
Yep. And Tristan plans on competing with other schools through Wisconsin Interscholastic Fishing Association. So Yeah, and then there was one more thing. Oh, the DVR, he did mention. That was the other thing that since then he has applied and he's already getting services. So, we're on a roll here. And of course, he wouldn't be this far if he wouldn't take the bull by the reins and take off. He's really been a go-getter for a sophomore. And I'm just excited to work with kids like Tristan. I'm excited to work with all my kids, but when they want to be this involved, that just makes me more enthused and more excited. So, all right, back to Brian.
I don't know why I would need to talk anymore after that. Tristan, someday I'll take you fishing up north.
There you go. He would love it. He would be in the boat the whole time.
Yeah, well, that's usually me. I don't usually leave the boat unless there's an emergency. Okay, so let me get back to sharing my screen here. That's a great story, by the way. Well done, Tristan. You're doing all the right things, man. Julie talked a little bit about independent living. This is a slippery slope for us because sometimes we bypass these things, especially for students who have significant disabilities, because we just make assumptions that, well, this will be taken care of, so we don't have to worry about it. Mom and dad will be the caretaker. And I remember I had a student that I worked with, and he's still working at Kalahari Resorts in Wisconsin Dells. I helped him get that job back in 2009. And he was a student who always had a specific learning disability, was his special education diagnosis. And we always kind of wondered if there were some things happening with him on the autism spectrum. And his junior year, we had him evaluated for autism in the medical community and found him to be on the spectrum. And we helped him get long-term support from the county because he was a late bloomer in the significant disability realm. And I remember having a conversation with his mom and dad about him getting a driver's license, and they were not engaged with that at all. In fact, they pushed back on me really hard to the point where I couldn't bring it up anymore without jeopardizing my relationship with them and my relationship at work. So I didn't talk about it anymore. And I wish I would have, because A, he could have gotten his driver's license. B, mom and dad took him to work, but as soon as dad got sick, mom passed away suddenly. And now we don't have a plan. So if you can do anything in your power to formulate some kind of a plan to exhaust all resources to get a driver's license, in some cases it's just not going to happen, right? But we have to try as much as we can to work with the technology world and adaptive experts and work with DVR and work with agencies to exhaust every resource. Because what we're finding in Wisconsin is more and more kids with disabilities are not getting a driver's license. And that's a serious concern, because transportation is going to be your biggest independent living nemesis. And it's that way in suburban counties, urban and rural counties. We see the same thing everywhere statewide. So in order for IEP team participants to not bypass independent living, we created this independent living checklist. And it's one of my favorite resources that I helped create in our grant, beyond this one that Julie and I worked on the assessments, because this was so needed. And Tim Markle was very instrumental in adding in some things in here that revolve around healthcare, because that's his wheelhouse. So This is step 11 in the PTP. So PTP writers have to address independent living, and they can say, yes, we need that, or no, we don't. And this checklist will help the IEP team answer yes or no. If you can check all these boxes in these areas, then you're saying, yeah, the student is proficient at these independent living skills. If you do not have boxes checked, then the IEP team has an obligation to address these deficiencies. And you can see healthy lifestyle choices is a huge component of independent living. And look at all of the things that involve personal care and taking care of yourself. And then we have safety and decision-making, communication skills, and having a transportation plan.
Brian, if I can interject about the driver's license. DVR does a great job with supporting that. If for whatever reason, I have students who they're 18, they have not ever driven a car before. They've been told just go down and take the driver's test, but if they haven't had any experience, that's not necessarily going to be successful. And my DVR counselor has been done really well with my students who have gone through driver's ed. They have added some extra driving time. They'll hire a driving instructor to take them out behind the wheel, because sometimes it's a matter of they don't have a decent vehicle to take the student out driving, meaning they, the family, or there isn't somebody willing to take them out, or they need a lot more practice time than what has been allotted. And DVR has contracted with, a lot of times it's been with the one that the driver's ed instructor has had years experience of teaching driver's ed, but has also worked with individuals with disabilities quite a bit. So there's a lot of familiarization, and they go through an assessment. Is this person capable of driving a car, or does this person need adaptive equipment, or, you know, how many extra lessons might be needed? So if you're not sure, talk to your DVR counselor about that. And a lot of times, because as Brian mentioned, it's the #1 barrier from getting decent employment. Sometimes that's a real quick fix.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. That's great perspective. And the last 3 things that are addressed in independent living are personal finance, housing, and taking charge of your health care. And, you know, frankly, more and more businesses are investing in the independent living needs of the people that work for them. Like Kalahari Resorts in Wisconsin Dells is actually thinking about starting up their own transportation services for their clients, for people that work there, because it's such an area of need. So big issue in our state, and everybody's invested in trying to figure out transportation and wrestle with that barrier. So this checklist is really helpful for IEP teams to make decisions about independent living skills, being yes, my son or daughter needs them, or no, we don't need to worry about this right now. And just to be honest, I wish I would have had this checklist when I was younger, and I bet you my mother wished she would have had it, because I probably was lacking in many of those areas, and I didn't have an IEP. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Like, the stuff that we create is they're not always products for dealing with a disability. They're just products for dealing with life, being a youth. The only thing that I'll say about having a disability is the challenge that it presents is negotiating supports and services to manage. Everything else is, I just want Starbucks. That's the easiest way I could say it. And the best advice I could give you is right here. These are 5 of the biggest. If you do these things well, you are going to be on a journey that's going to lead you to a happy place. You have to have conversations about what's possible. Too many conversations are, yeah, but they can't do that. They shouldn't do that. That program's not right for them. That's deficit thinking. You need to look at real world examples of people who have been successful and frame the conversations around what's possible, not what's impossible. We need to focus on plugging into the parents. Parent connections are huge. If we don't connect to the families, then we're in big trouble. Getting kids access to their peers. The more we pull kids away from their peers, the more we're going to have problems when it comes to transitioning them to adulthood, because you can't expect someone to switch a light switch that quickly. And we need to share information. I was just talking to some really smart special educators about some of the CTE programs that are available, and they didn't know what they didn't know because they never talked to the school counselors. They're so busy planning special ed for special ed, they never connect with anybody else in their building. They're on their own island, and that's dangerous. So you have to emphasize employment, work experience, and work skills. If you don't, then, as Temple Grandin says, be ready for your kid to live in your basement and play video games. And that's not a meaningful life. Everybody should have a job. And if we set the stage for employment when students are young, then the families will adjust to those conversations. If you start having conversations about employment and you've been talking about what a student can't do for 10 years, that's not going to change overnight. We have to focus on the resources and the supports that are out there, not the deficiencies. The deficiencies exist, but if we focus on resources and supports, we can manage that. And we have to think about goal setting. We always have to be building on some kind of a foundation. And that takes us back to the transition assessment, conversation earlier. So, and then if we do this stuff, you'll be your best, and you'll be able to travel down the road, and the road is not going to be straight. That ain't going to happen. So these are some more resources. It's probably my favorite one, the Wisconsin Compass. That's a comprehensive transition planning tool for families that talks about all things PTP, and then a whole bunch more stuff. Middle school transition planning resource is great. The transition app is here. This is a parent guide to the PTP. This is a nice flow chart that we just revised this year to include all of our new resources. The transition app is in there.
Hey, Brian, is there still on the PDP page, the, what do they call it? The demo that the parents can access?
No, the demo site went away.
Okay.
DPI said no more demo site because there was the potential for the demo site to be hacked, and then people would have access to confidential information, and DPI said, no, we're not doing it anymore. So if parents really want to get a glimpse of what the PTP looks like, do the app. Work with your son or daughter, or if you're doing foster care and you're a caretaker for a young man or a young woman, do the transition app with them. That is the best way to inform the PTP and have, like what Tristan was doing with that short little PowerPoint is priceless. Like that's how you develop a student to become their own director of their IEP instead of sitting quietly listening to adults talk about their life.
And Tristan, as he mentioned in the PowerPoint, that he wanted to increase his self-advocacy skills. And by doing that meeting and that PowerPoint right there was a big step forward for increasing self-advocacy. And his mom was pretty impressed when she came to the meeting. It's not what she expected, and she really was quite thrilled with it. But a lot of that information I incorporate into the PTP along with other activities. And get involved as you want to, as much as you want to with that. You're entitled. So, okay, I'm done. I don't know about you, Brian, but.
No, I just like to make myself available for questions. I know this is a lot of information,
And Brian, one of the key questions that I know I'll get, because you have a lot of links on the slides, is if you will get me the slideshow so that I can send it out to people.
yes, I will.
And that way they
for
can
sure.
click their own links. Great.
I will
And
definitely do
also
that.
can I also share your and Julie's contact information in case anybody would have questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so then any questions that anybody has for Brian, Julie, Tristan?
Somebody's got to have a question.
And I know
And
we kind of ran a little long, so I'm
I
willing to
do want
stay on
to,
if
I
people
do want to
wanna ask.
acknowledge, yep, it is 7 o'clock. So if you need to go, we totally understand. Thank you for being here, but we will hang out for a couple of minutes here for you to ask questions. And I'm actually going to go ahead and shut off the recording.
Julie's like, Brian, we need to